For I say to you, from now on, you shall by no means see me until you say, now it's not just the magic line here. This isn't words. They have to mean it from their heart. Until you can say, blessed is he who's coming in the authority of Yahweh. And I want us to make sure we understand the full context of this. I believe applies also to you understanding your responsibility to go and find anointed, appointed leadership and get in behind them. Can you say, blessed is he? And I'm not just talking about here, again, this is the multi-layeredness of Scripture. Yes, it's talking about Yeshua. You have to be able to say, blessed is he, Yeshua, who has come in the authority in the name of Yahweh. Yes, you need to, but also I believe this extends to those prophets that he was talking about, those congregational leaders. He's talking about anointed, appointed. Can you say, blessed is he who comes in that authority? Because think of that this flows right after these people said, oh no, we would never be like those who killed the prophets. So he can't be just speaking here about himself. He's speaking about those who come in the authority. Can you say, blessed is he? And think of that person as a blessing, even if they're not saying everything that you want to hear, and even if they're not tickling your ears, but they're whacking your toes. Okay? I mean, some of you feel like the guy who was up in front of the mic is playing Whac-a-Mole with your feet. You know? Got the big hammer out, smacking at the toes there. We don't do that on purpose. We're just reading his word. And hopefully his word, if it's doing it, is doing the Whac-a-Mole thing on your feet. And by the way, if you're not doing anything as a problem, see, think of it like Whac-a-Mole is when the mole pops out in that game in the arcade, right? You're supposed to hit it. Well, guess what? If you're doing everything you're supposed to, nothing's ever popping up to get hit. So if you're getting whacked, that's because you're doing something. You know, the pastor over here at this building here that we rent, you know, years ago before he retired, had said to me, you know, that he had been told by one of his mentors, you know, when you throw the rock into the pack of dogs, the one that yelps is the one you hit. And he says the same thing with the teaching. You throw that teaching out there, the one that yelps is the one you hit. So sometimes the one that didn't like it the most is the one that needed it the most. Because that's why they're yelping. So we need to get to that point where we can say, blessed is he who's coming in the name of Yahweh. Of course, we need to figure out how to identify the ones who come in the authority of Yahweh. Because we've actually made lots of mistakes in the past, haven't we? And so we have two choices. We could either just throw in the towel and say, I'm just going to give up trying to figure that out. Or we could say, well, I just need to use better criteria and do a better job of figuring it out. Sadly, most people throw in the towel and just say, I'm going to give up. I'm just going to believe that nobody really has the authority of Yahweh. I'm going to be an authority to myself. I'm only going to learn directly from Yeshua and all this. But you never see that anywhere in Scripture, by the way. The Father doesn't even teach anybody about himself except that he sent his Son in the flesh so his Son would teach them about him. He said, I came to show you the Father. In other words, it still was a being in a flesh suit doing the teaching. Because that's the way he works. I don't care if you don't like it. It's just the way it is. Stop fighting against that. The problem is you still have to identify which guys in the flesh suit are the false ones leading you astray and which ones are anointed, appointed, leading you in the right way to go. That is on you, and that you take through prayer, through the Ruach, to be led, to be able to have eyes that can see and ears that can hear and discernment to know, am I supposed to be under this particular leader? Am I supposed to be submitting to this particular authority that looks like he may be someone who's sent in your authority? Because I've been deceived before, Father. I've made a mistake before, Father. Help me not to make that mistake again. You know what Father's going to tell you? He said, I used all those mistakes for their purposes too. So don't get overly stressed about it. He says, all those places that you were in your journey or your journey or your journey, that was still how he got you to where you are now. So don't knock that. Because some of you will look at somebody else and go, oh, I'm sure glad I didn't go down their journey. Well, they're glad they didn't go down yours. I mean, your journey is your journey. Now, the question isn't what, as far as looking backwards. The question is, what are you going to do now going forward based on your journey? You're here now. This is where you are. By the way, all of you are sitting in this room right now. If you're on live stream, wherever you are, you're sitting where you are at this point in time, where you are in your growth, in your walk, and all that things. So now every moment you're at a decision point. Where am I going to go now? Am I going to go straight? Am I going to go backwards? Am I going to turn left? Am I going to turn right? And you can't sit there, and we're going to get into this in a little bit. I'm looking at the clock. Maybe not today, but we're going to get to this in a little bit. We get to Ezekiel 18. You can't be always looking backwards and going, oh, but if my father had acted different, then I would have. No, it's on you. What are you going to do? Are you going to submit? Are you going to choose to follow? Are you going to keep putting the self-sovereignty in front of everything and do what you want? What choice are you going to make now? Oh, but you don't understand. I was raised. It doesn't matter what you were raised. You're here now. Everybody was raised with something. Everybody's gone through something. Everybody's broken and damaged, okay? So you can't say, but, you don't understand. But you don't understand. I had my things too. If we were to be open books to each other, we would be shocked to find out that every one of us has gone through some really miserable, horrible things. So stop thinking yours was worse than everybody else's. Even if it was. It still was the simplicity is, it was yours. Doesn't matter if it was worse than anybody else's. It was yours. Why was it yours? I don't know. That's between him and him. I was going to say between him and you. It's just he allowed that to happen. It's how he chose to use you. Either we have emunah or we don't. What is emunah? Everything that happens in our lives happens because he allowed it or caused it, because it's going to help us go from where we are to where he wants us to be. If we don't fight it, if we are open to it. But we have to receive that. Instead of always going, well, I was a Wiccan and I was the this and I was praying to, so what? Are you doing it now? No. It was your path. I don't care if you were a Baptist or a Catholic or a Pentecostal or a Jew or a Buddhist, it doesn't matter what, or you were molested or you were a thug and you did molest, whatever, it doesn't matter what side of any of this you were on. Where are you now? Okay, where are you now, and what are you going to do now going forward? The key with all the other stuff is, did you learn anything? Did you learn anything from the stuff that you did? Did you learn anything from the stuff that was done to you? See, some of us learned the wrong things from that stuff. We learned that I can't trust any authority, instead of just realizing I have to be careful with authority. Different distinction. Some of us learned, all men are this, all women are that, all authorities are this. We have these globalized ideas that we now embrace that make it really impossible to function. Not in everything, but in some areas of our lives. Because in those areas, those global beliefs are causing you to be unable to interact with the people that are in those areas of the global belief. I mean, if it's men or leadership or women or this or that, whatever it is, you are now dysfunctional in that area because you have a globalized belief that doesn't allow for the possibility that just because it was done badly doesn't mean it can't be done better and right. And we struggle against that globalized belief system that we have embraced, and by the way, we've placed it in our own heads. It didn't come from him. Okay, we are basically doing the baby with the bathwater knee-jerk thing. We globalize. All men, all women, all leaders, all this, all that, right? Now, granted, the majority that you've experienced in your life may have been all that. And deserved every bit of what you're saying. But that doesn't mean there can't be a good one. What we have to figure out is, did he cause us to have this thing in our lives that never can be done right? Or can we see examples of it being done right, realizing if it was done right before, it could be done right again? And so the problem has not been, really right now the body is suffering from a lack of proper leadership. But we also have an outright global rejection of leadership for the most part by most people, because they have had it done badly so often that they just have globalized that it must be the problem. 50% of the marriages in this country end up in divorce. Do you blame marriage for that? The problem is marriage. A lot of people get sick from what they eat, so don't eat. Because after all, if you don't eat, then you can't have... Do you understand what I'm saying? We can globalize, and it sounds absurd when I say it that way, but think about just as absurd it is to say, oh, well, we shouldn't have leaders anymore. We're not supposed to have one guy in charge of anything. Well, where do you see that in Scripture, really? There's always a vertical leadership. And by the way, we see in Scripture that often it's done badly. Oh, like in Judah, it was like every other king. Seemed like to be good king, bad king, good king, bad king, like every other king. All right? But that's the whole idea, is that you still see that it can be done well and it can be done badly. So it doesn't mean that we just throw the whole thing out. But I don't trust. I know you don't. That's part of why I don't think Messiah's come back yet. He's not ready for you to have the kingdom start right this minute, because we're not ready to trust. And if we can't trust anybody on this level, how do we trust the invisible?